Slocky. Shalom. First and foremost, I'd like to give all praises and glory and honor to Yahweh Ba'Shem, Yahweh Shai Ba'Shem, Karkadash. Double honors to the elders and apostles of Great Millstone, preaching the word, truthfully and sincere. And shalom to the Akim, scattered through the four corners of the globe, preaching the word, truthfully and sincere. And shalom to the Akim, that be like unto the speckled bird, preaching the word, truthfully and sincere. Let's say shalom to you, Akim, out there. And this is the book of Luke, chapter 21, verse 25. And it reads, "And there shall be signs in the sun and in the moon and in the stars, and upon the earth distress of nations, in perplexity, the sea and the waves war." Second address 9-3. "Therefore, when there shall be seen earthquakes and upwells in the people of the world." Second address 15, verse 16. And it reads, "For there shall be sedition among men, invading one another, and they shall not regard their kings nor their princes, in the course of their actions to stand in their power." And this is a news article right here. As you see, I brought out those scriptures in reference to this news article right here, because you are going to see a highly increased rise of civil unrest globally, and we are definitely approaching in those times for that to happen. And this is a news article from RT.com from September 2nd, 2022. And it says, risk of civil unrest rising globally. A study says more than 100 nations worldwide have been affected, and UK-based global strategic firm says. And this was on August the 30th. People running from tear gas and water cannons in Colombo, Sri Lanka on August the 30th, 2022. It says countries worldwide are experiencing an unprecedented rise in the potential for a civil unrest, according to a fresh study by Vest Maplecrop, a U.S.-based global strategic consulting firm. Over 100 nations experiencing increase in rise of civil unrest in the last quarter. The company said it is civil unrest index, a CUI, published on Thursday. The index has derived from a set of various surveys assessing different factors such as inflation and a government mechanism to overcome or quell conflicts, as well as the overall impact of unrest. Out of the 198 nations worldwide, only 42 saw the risk of civil unrest increasing in the survey period, while 101 of them saw increasing. The situation in the rest remains unchanged compared to the previous quarter. The company's leaked rising civil unrest with the impact of inflation on the price of staples, foods, and energy. It says the impact of evidence across the globe with popular discontent over rising living costs emerged on the streets of developing and emerging markets, like stretch from the EU, Sri Lanka, and Peru, Kenya, Ecuador, and Iran. It is a press release. It said in a press release, I meant to say Slocky, Europe stands out, the ranking negative, have experiencing a rise of the risk of civil unrest. Right, because it makes sense, because I believe there was another article, a recent one came out as well too, because the EU and Europe, they dealing with hyperinflation, and due to the weather drought, record-breaking heat waves, farms and crops and stuff like that, the cost of living. I believe the consumer spending was like 10.5%. That been the highest since a very long time, since the early 1980s. So that does make sense. They in that negative range for a potential civil unrest over there in Europe, and it's a mostly highly likely chance that will happen. So I just want to add that onto it. It says Europe stands out in a ranking negative, having experienced a rise in the risk of civil unrest, in large part due to the fallout from Russia's invasion of Ukraine. The company said the situation on the continent is expected to get worse. Okay. Slovakia for momentary. Have to do some work quick.
Here tonight, 84 degrees for Saturday with that chance of a few passing storms in the afternoon. Slight chance of rain on Sunday morning, and then cooling temperatures Sunday at 78 for the high, 79 in public high schedule heading to Monday. Beach hazard though in effect Saturday afternoon and Sunday afternoon with high waves and risk. Thank you, Albert.
Your local news continues on our digital streaming network, CBS News Chicago.
Right.
It's free and always on our website and app.
We love to see you back
true.
here on television for the CBS 2 News at 6, and we leave you with a live look at just that Millennium Park.
Yeah.
Tonight, millions of Americans hit the road and
I got it. Thanks. All right. Slovakia for that. Had to do so. So yeah, I'm gonna read it again for edification's sake. It says Europe standouts the ranking negatively having experienced a rise in the risk of civil war, in a large part due to the fallout. Slovakia for that. Due to the fallout of a Russian invasion of Ukraine. From fallout invasion of Ukraine, the company says the situation on the continent is expected to get worse in the next 6 months. Bosnia and Herzegovina, if I pronounced that right, Switzerland, the Netherlands, Germany, Ukraine are all among the states with the biggest projected increase in risk. It added. It says the registered uptick in civil unrest, if I'm not mistaken, I believe, was it over there in the Netherlands? I think they had like a farmers truckers protest, due to the fact with the farmers' jobs and the crops and stuff like that. For an example, I believe they had, if I'm not mistaken, that if that was a couple of weeks back or close to a month or two ago, I believe that was over there in the Netherlands. They had like a protest with the farmers and the truckers and stuff like that. So yeah, it makes sense of a high risk of protests and civil unrest. But that's yet to be yet to be seen. But it's potential though. But continuing on with the reading, the registered uptick in civil unrest is the largest since the CUI was first released by the company back in 2016. With more than countries around the world, inflation about 6%. And I believe that country, was it Kurdistan? I believe it was, yeah, I believe it was Kurdistan. They had that huge protest, and I believe, and it was like anarchy in the streets. It was crazy. And I believe that happened like in June or July, I believe. And it was like over 20 something people had died in that conflict. If I'm not mistaken, if that's the right country that had happened. So yeah, so that's a preview of what potentially might comes, with that civil unrest, because these citizens after these protests, they be, hey man, in these different countries, they be taking these protesters to another level, man. Even if it were somebody getting seriously injured, or the worst case. But yeah, according to this survey right here, that they put it out, and it's gonna be some more increase of potential civil unrest, due to what the inflation, the cost of living, the high consumer spending as well too, especially the economy globally as well too. So yeah, you're gonna have a potential civil unrest there, in the countries that they just mentioned, And it says the registered uptick in civil unrest is the largest since the CUI was first released by the company back in 2016. With more than 80% of the countries around the world seeing inflations about 6%, the social economic risks are reaching a critical level. Almost half of all the countries on the CUI are now characterized as high or extremely risk, and a number of states are expected to experience a further deterioration of the next 6 months. Risk of maple Croft, noted. The global trend is unlikely to change anytime soon. The company warned only a significant reduction of global food and energy prices can arrest the negative global trend to a civil unrest risk. Recession fears are among the inflation is expected to be worse in 2023 than in 2022 is explained. Wow. So yeah, man, hey, that should be upwards of the people of the world, as I brought out 2 Ezra 9:3. That's sedition among spirit between the nations and against their leaders that's in power. They're going to highly increase the civil unrest protests about that as well too, which is in 2 Ezra 15 and verse 16. That sedition among men's spirit is going to increase even more than ever. And the nations rising up against nations, city against city, kingdom against kingdom, which is Isaiah 19:2. I will set the Egyptian against the Egyptian. Just like back down in ancient times, now this is in modern times, And that's going to happen in modern day Babylon the Great as well too. If I could bring out that article as well too. So yeah, hey, these civil unrests are definitely coming throughout the whole planet Earth due to the global economic not doing so good with the hyperinflation and the gas and the cost of living and high consumer spending increasing as well too. And I believe if I can, this is from modern day Babylon. And this is an article from RT.com as well too, alternative news around the world. And this was published on September the 2nd, 2022. Salakia, slip of the tongue, but it's all good though. But the highlight of this news article, and it reads, this is from Robert Bridge, and he's a writer and a journalist. It says, is civil war possible in modern day America? With a seemingly unbridgeable rift separating society, grim predictions of armed conflict intensifying. And compared to the political black background led to the Civil War in 1861 through 1865, when the nations were torn over slavery, it is difficult to name just one primary issue separating America today. Just like in the book Mark 3 and 25, if your house be divided, how shall it stand? And matter of fact, and I'm going to bring that out, and I'm going to continue to read the rest of this article. Slovakia. This is the book of Mark, chapter 3, verse 25, and it reads through the Holy Scriptures. And if a house be divided against itself, how can it stand? Right, how can it stand? Because you got both sides of the political, on both sides, the left-hand side and the right-hand side, conservatives versus liberals, gender wars, food clashes, economic classes. You name it, many different categories, So that's why it's going to be a potential civil unrest in modern day Babylon the Great, And see what Joe Biden, after he made that statement about, they're losing their democracy, and they're going to do all their best for the people on the right hand side to not stop the democracy. So as I brought it up before, and I just got to reading it just now, Mark 3 and 25, how a nation, if a house is divided, how can a nation still stand, because you got so much division between the nations, You might as well call it the divided states of Babylon, Might as well call it that way, because all the nations are not fully united with one another. And I'm presumably that goes on in other nations around the world as well too, So that potential increasing now more than ever, civil unrest around the world globally, and here in modern day Babylon as well too. And I'm gonna go back to the news article, continue finishing on. Compared to the political background led to the Civil War of 1861 through 65, when the nations were torn over slavery, it is difficult to name one primary issue separating America today. Is the United States doomed to repeat history? It says no other developing country in the country fights over the possibility of a civil war more than the United States, which is true. Perhaps that because the memory of the first one of the 1861 through 65, the deadliest military conflict. But this one is going to be way different because you got so many different factors going on in comparisons in comparison in that time, now we're living in new modern day times because you got so much different factors and organizations and groups, So it is definitely going to increase the hostility of civil unrest, increasing potentially in modern day Babylon. It says the deadliest military conflict in American history was so utterly devastating that it's impossible to shake. Well, this one that's coming up pretty soon, that time of Jacob's trouble in Jeremiah 30 and 7, So that's going to happen as well too. And that's going to take place in the time of Jacob's trouble, because we are definitely getting closer to that, And it says, especially Matthews 24 and 21, I believe. There's going to be such a great tribulation since the time of beginning of mankind dwelled upon the earth. That's how it's going to get drastic out here in these times that we are currently living in. As I read the article, the first one about potential increasing of civil unrest globally, which all those nations that they just named, like the Netherlands, Germany, and many more other places as well too, in parts of Europe, and a lot of many more countries. So yeah, that Matthew 24:21 is definitely going to come into full effect, that great tribulation. And I believe in 2nd Ezra 16 through 70, something like that. That great insurrection that's coming as well too. But another further than that, continuing on with the reading. No other developed country in the world frets over the possibility of a civil war more than no more than the United States, which is modern-day Babylon the Great, according to the Holy Scriptures. Perhaps that because the memory of the first one of 1865, the deadliest military conflict in American history, was so utterly devastating that it is impossible to shake, or many Americans generally see no other way out of the impasse they currently facing that by going to war against themselves. Yep, that's that. It said I will set the Egyptian against the Egyptian, modern day. It says, and yet another one of those coronary poles that seem determined to inspire a self-fulfillment prophecy. The economic and YouGov ask America about changes in the U.S. political climate. 2 in 5 of the respondents believe a civil war is at least somewhat likely in the next decade. Republicans are more likely than Democrats to expect a civil war. Few see things improving in the coming years. 62% expect an increase of political division. Yep. People on the left-hand side, on the right-hand side, these divisions are definitely going to increase. As I stated, as I brought it out, I repeat it for the 3rd time. Mark 3:25. If a house be divided, how shall it stand? Because you got so many separations and divisions between different nations and different organizations and factors. One part is pro this with this, and the other one is not with it, So you're gonna still see a huge division between 2 different organization factors in the race of the nations as well too. It could almost be an argument that the United States have suffered a long, hot summer of Black Lives Matter protests by the storming of the Capitol on January 6th. It's already experiencing a civil war, but is just haven't been officially announced yet. It is necessary to have another Battle of Gettysburg with standing armies with thousands dead to fit the definition of a civil war. In a case of the FBI raid on a Mar-a-Lago Donald Trump Florida estate certainly underscores the climate of the political divisiveness as a prologue of major unrest. Republicans saw this as the least proof that establishment has no interest in playing by the rules. The weaponized, that's Esau Edom. He don't play by the rules. Even if he throw his own people under the bus. The weaponized federal agencies that tends to move on so swift and viciously against the right conservative argue never showed the same enthusiasm when addressing the alleged wrongs of the left. Meanwhile, the situation of the cultural front seems no less damnable. We are talking about the country at 65% Christian and 50% conservative. Slocky, struggling to come to grip with an explosion of fiercely controversial of ideas, the critical race theory, which seeks to blame the white race for all the problems now besetting minorities of transgender alphabet lifestyle, I may put it, which holistic the idea that gender is not determined by the physical what of an individual, but rather whatever he or she or they or any of the open list of pronouns believe. That's madness. Believing himself to be in many alphabet lifestyles, story hours can the public mind handle it before something gives. So yeah, hey, this potential civil unrest, it is coming, but we don't know when though. But we're getting steps closer of a potential civil war. Is definitely uncivil unrest, and this have to do with in many categories, on an economic scale, on a political scale. Even I really didn't want to say that, but it is true. Because you got a lot of division between both sides, the left hand side and the right hand side of both groups, of both organizations, and many different organizations as well too. So yeah, that's a potential civil unrest that's coming very soon, globally, and here in modern day Babylon as well too. As I brought out Mark 3:25, if a house be divided, how shall it stand? And it's not going to stand because you got so much division between both sides of the organization factors, on the left hand side and the right hand side, because you got a lot of different many organization factors out there doesn't agree with the necessary other things of the other groups don't agree with, and you got one agree that's pro this, it's with it, and they fully support it and they stand by it, and you got the other side of the organization group on the left hand side that doesn't support that. So you're gonna have that continued growing animosity between all the different organization factors groups on the left hand side and the right hand side, and that's globally as well too. Between the nations and organization factors, it's going to be a lot of civil unrest due to the economy, due to the high price of foods, to food shortages, and that's when that I believe Amos chapter 8, I forget what verse it was. That's that famine of the word as well too. That's going to come into play as well too. That's going to cause a lot of civil unrest as well too. Economic standpoint, of consumer prices going up high, gas prices, inflation, and many other different categories, and it's going to cause a high stir of civil unrest around the world, and here in modern day Babylon as well too. So with that, I hope this was edifying through the spirit, power, grace, and mercy at the Hawaii Shah. And first and foremost, I'd like to give all praises and glory and honor to Yahweh Ba'Hashem, Yahweh Shai, Ba'Hashem, Wakar Kadash. Double honors to the elders and apostles of Great Millstone, preaching this word truthfully and sincerely. And shalom to the Akim, scattered through the four corners of the globe, preaching the word truthfully and sincerely. And shalom to the Akim, that be like unto the speckled bird, preaching the word truthfully and sincerely. And until next time, I will say shalom and a ball.